Hello and welcome to my 6.0 Lauma guide. Today I'll be going over her overall kit, her best weapons, and team compositions, and if she is worth pulling for. So I'm going to go ahead and get straight into it, starting off with her role and overall kit. So Lauma is a 5-star Dendro Catalyst support who supports Bloom teams and buffs overall Bloom related damage, so that also includes Hyper Bloom, and using her skill to decrease Dendro and Hydro resistance, or using the hold version to deal Lunar Bloom damage. And then her burst basically gains stacks and it buffs Hyper Bloom, Version Bloom, and Lunar Bloom reactions based on her elemental mastery. Moving on to her talents, starting off with Nature's Chorus. So whenever a party member triggers Bloom, it will be converted into Lunar Bloom. And for every point of elemental mastery that Lauma has, it will increase the Lunar Bloom's base damage, which can go up to 14%. And since Lauma is from Nod Cry, the moon sign level in your team will go up by 1. So with her next talent, for each point of elemental mastery she has, it increases her elemental skill damage by up to 32%, and then also reduces her charge attack, which you're not really going to be using anyway. Her first moon sign ability, so if you only have one Nod Cry character in the party, Bloom, Hyper Bloom, and Version damage can now score crits, which is very nice at 15% crit rate and 100% crit damage. And then at moon sign level 2, it buffs Lunar Bloom crit rate by 10% and crit damage by 20%. However, if you have this up, so you have 2 Nod Cry characters in the party, her other talent will not be activated, so you'll lose the Hyper Bloom and Version damage bonuses. Now moving on to her elemental skill. At level 9, it decreases elemental resistance by 22.5% and then 25% at level 10. And since it lasts for 10 seconds and the cooldown is 12 seconds, you'll have even more uptime because this elemental skill follows your character and does Dendro damage every 2 seconds, which means you'll have a lot more elemental resistance uptime than the overall duration. And with her hold skill, it deals Lunar Bloom damage and can actually hit very hard, like 100k very easily, and up to like 300 or 400k. And moving on to the Verdant Dew ability, which basically becomes active when she's in the party. So whenever Lunar Bloom is triggered, you'll gain 1 Verdant Dew stack, and you can have up to 3 at a time, and you can gain 1 stack every 2.5 seconds. And she doesn't even have to be on the field to gain the stacks. These stacks then tie into her elemental burst, where it will consume the stacks of the Verdant Dew into Pale Hymn stacks, which will increase your Bloom related damage based on Lauma's elemental mastery. And so it's kind of similar to Shenhe's Quills, and you gain 18 stacks if you have 3 Verdant Dew, so 6 stacks per Verdant Dew. And those hits will actually run out quite quickly just because of how much Dendro reactions actually happen. And then for talent level up priority, you want to go for skill first. It's a skill you want to crown just because of the elemental resistance. And then her burst for the stack buffs, and then normal attacks do not need to be leveled at all, unless you have her at C6, which at C6 she does Lunar Bloom damage along with her normal attacks, but that's not really needed for most players. Moving on to artifacts, you can either use Deepwood if you already have a set, which most people do for the Dendro resistance, or you can run her better set and overall best artifact set, the Silken Moon Serenade, which for the 2-piece gives 20% energy recharge, which is nice because you're going to need around 150 energy recharge total when you're running Lauma in general if you want to get her burst up consistently. And when she deals elemental damage, it'll increase elemental mastery for all members by 60 or 120, depending on if you have 1 or 2 Nod Cry characters in the party. And this effect can be triggered off field. And overall lunar reaction damage is increased by up to 10%. And moving on to the artifact substats and main stats. For the sands, you'll want to run elemental mastery or energy recharge if you need it. On the goblet, you're going to want to run elemental mastery, and then on the circlet, you can either run crit rate or crit damage, but elemental mastery is also good. And then for the substats, you'll want Elemental Mastery, crit rate, crit damage, energy recharge until you have 150. Moving on to weapons, her best is obviously her signature, and I think it might be able to work for a couple other characters, but it's mainly meant for her, obviously. So when the equipped character's elemental skill deals Hydra or Dendro damage, they will gain 60 elemental mastery. Whenever a nearby party triggers a lunar bloom, you'll gain an additional 60 elemental mastery. And with those two abilities both active, all nearby party members' bloom damage will be increased by 120%, and in their hyper bloom inversion by 80%, and then lunar bloom by 40%. And then a good free-to-play option coming in 6.0 is the Black Mirror Lantern, which increases bloom damage by 48% at R1, lunar bloom by 12%, and then if you have one of the moon sign abilities up, so which you will because of Lauma, you'll gain an additional 12% lunar damage bonus. And at R5, these numbers double. Moving on to team comps, she's basically going to buff all Dendro related teams. So for example, Bloom with Nilou. So you'll have Lauma, Nilou, Kokomi, and Nahida. So you can run Nahida on Deepwood and then Lauma on the new set, and you'll get the 40% from Nahida and the 22 to 25% resistant tread from Lauma. And then not to mention also the elemental mastery buffs. And all of the extra stuff going on with Lauma's kit, this team is actually quite strong. And then for Hyper Bloom, you'll have Lauma, Nahida, a Hydro Applier, and then any Electro DPS. And then you can also run her with I'll Hate Them. And with Lauma allowing Hyper Bloom to crit, that team will do noticeably more damage. Especially with Hyper Blooms usually being around 30k. And with Lauma and all of her buffs, you can get up to 100k Hyper Bloom hits. And with Burgeon, you'll have Lauma, a Hydro Applicator, and then just your Pyro Trigger. And then you'll probably also want to run a healer as well, just because of the Burgeon self-damage. You can also run Lauma in Nouvellette teams as well. So like Lauma, Nouvellette, and then I think you'll want more Dendro, and then a second Hydro as well. I'm not really sure how that team works, but I do know it is another option for Nouvellette if you do have him. So overall, in my opinion, Lauma is definitely a character you should be getting if you play any Dendro related team or plan on playing a Dendro team, especially with Nefer releasing in 6.1, which looking at more leaks and such, it looks like she's going to be heavily reliant on not cry characters. So Lauma and I know I'm guessing. And even outside of that team, Lauma is very strong, can buff Hyper Bloom and just overall Dendro related teams by 30 to 50%, just completely outclassing Nahida. So if you do plan on pulling for anyone in 6.0, it should definitely be Lauma in my opinion. And with that, this wraps it up. So if you found this helpful or you enjoyed the video, leaving a like and subscribing will be greatly appreciated. And with that, I will see y'all in the next one.